Good morning and welcome back to your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts. And as always, I am honored that you're spending part of your day with us. Joining me today, again, they were here last week, are the team behind the Personalities Remixed approach, Lewis Senior and Mark Wilkinson. And this is part 2 of what I consider to be a very important and fascinating discussion that began with the last episode where we unpacked the foundational personality types. And those are the types that are shaping your teams and your success. And if you miss part 1, the power of e-colors in action, be sure to go back and download and listen wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. And today's conversation picks up right where we left off. These gentlemen join us to transform these personality traits into practical strategies for entrepreneurs and leaders tapping hidden potential everywhere. But before we continue, today's episode is brought to you by Jennifer Jensen. She is a leadership coach, and she's the author of Developing Authentic Leaders, a practical guide for all leaders. And with more than 25 years of real-world corporate experience, Jennifer works with high-potential leaders who are ready to move from overlooked middle manager to confident, values-driven influence. And her Authentic Leader programs combine proven assessments with personalized one-on-one coaching to align what you think, say, feel, and so your leadership feels natural and your teams respond with trust. So if you're navigating complex personalities, and we'll be talking about that with our guest today, stepping into a larger role, or simply ready to lead with greater clarity and confidence, Jennifer offers practical tools that create measurable growth. Visit her website at authenticleader.ca. She's in Canada, or pick up Developing Authentic Leaders on Amazon to strengthen your leadership from the inside out. Now back to our conversation. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Denise.
Hello, Denise. Thank you for having us back, and certainly appreciate your comments on the social media post the other day.
Oh, thank you. Listen, you guys had me take the, I know I'm not supposed to call it a test, so tell me what I took.
The personality diversity indicator.
That's it. And, I was fascinated I started to take it once and I went, I don't think I was rushed, and I knew I was rushed. So I backed out of it and I went back later that evening when I was, things weren't quite as nuts as they are during the day. And it only took me about 15 minutes, but I have to tell you, I found out that my colors actually are perfect for me. I mean, I was pretty much across the board on all of them. But there were no shock. There was no surprises, which kind of surprised me. I felt like I should have been surprised.
And your e-colors were red and green, right?
Red and green, yeah.
So doer and thinker, or thinker-doer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew that. So I was like, woohoo.
Yeah. Well, and you told us that that you don't always like socializing, which would lead you to maybe having a slightly lower yellow score, socializing in person anyway. And I thought that was really interesting. So, yeah, I mean, we hope you enjoy the report and reading about your tendencies. And I go back to what we often say to people, especially at the start of large training sessions, is that nothing in that report and nothing that we're sharing and nothing in Personalities Remixed is us really telling you anything. It's all very much research. That's the difference, I think, with the e-colors, certainly from anything else I've seen, is we've researched personality styles based on the huge amount of data that we've got on, via people taking the questionnaire that you did. And then we've asked people with your personality style various different questions, from safety, teamwork, leadership, I mean, you name it, error reduction, all sorts. And we've asked questions and we've got the answers, and then we've turned it into coaching and training, which for me is a beautiful thing, because it kind of allows people to understand that there's lots of people like them, and there's also lots of people that are not like that.
Well, and you mentioned that I'm not sociable. I'm really not. I'm a highly committed introvert. I like people just fine, but I wear out after 59 3/4 minutes. I've timed it. I really don't do well out and about with people unless I find them just immensely fascinating, which you don't find in the grocery store as a rule. But, I'm not shy and I don't have any filters, but I do need to be left alone most of the time. So I actually thought my yellow would be different than it was. So apparently I'm not as obnoxious as I thought I was.
No, not obnoxious at all. But if you ask your two guests if they like being around people, that Lewis and I are both highly energized by people. Is that fair, Lewis?
Right.
It is, but I think it's worth pointing out. Funny enough, I was just having this conversation this morning when I was doing some coaching with a company in Dubai. We do not associate the e-colors with either extrovert or introvert because, first of all, I am predominantly yellow-red. I love to be around people at times. I love to interact with people, but am I somebody who would love to go to a party? No, I'm very much not in that category. So just one thing to be aware of. I think we've found over the years that there are people of different e-color combinations who can be either or both extrovert or introvert, depending on the circumstances.
And
well, that makes sense because when I'm out and about or I have people here that I know, like, and trust, I'm fine. I'm extroverted. I'm chatty. I'm happy. I'm cooking. I'm making gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
But if I get around people that there's nothing in them that speaks to me, I clam up. I leave. I don't even clam up. I just go.
So Lewis and I's tendencies are both yellow over red, doing socializers. And Lewis said there that, he doesn't necessarily want to be at parties, whereas I lived my life in parties for about 20 years. And I love being around huge groups of people, the bigger crowds, the better. So we both have those optimistic, enthusiastic, tendencies, but we don't, as Lewis says, we don't look at extrovert and introvert because you can have a personality style and be either.
Yeah.
Understood.
So there's the second thing for you, Denise. You don't say test, and we don't use extrovert and introvert.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Well, I've got two others for you while you do it. We call it personality styles, not types, because I feel that's more friendly. So you have a style, Denise, right? You're not a type. And I think that's a nice way of talking about personality. And also,
I like that.
We also talk about tendencies rather than fixed traits. There's a lot of other people that will try and define people, put them in boxes, tell them these are your traits. No. For us, you have a tendency towards the thinker and the doer with your red, your green and red, green. You have tendencies there. You tend to go towards those first, but you're perfectly capable of reaching your socializer and your relator, your yellow and your blue. So again, that's the beauty of the e-colors for me. It's so flexible and, friendly, I think is key.
It is. And I wanted to ask both of you a question. Part of the title, and I love this book, and I'm telling everybody who will listen, get this book and make it part of your entrepreneurial library. I have literally thousands of books in my office, which is what I call the command center. And yours is within easy grabbing distance because I keep opening it. I mean, it's just one of those books I'm going to go to time and time again. But part of the title of the book is surrounded by potential, and then the rest of it is personalities remixed. That's an optimistic framing. So my question really is, what are we missing when we look at people and only see behavior instead of potential?
Lewis?
Well, you're not seeing the whole picture for sure. And I think one of the things that's important to understand, maybe it's just worth backing up a little bit. It's something we didn't explain the other day, but it is explained in the book. The way that we kind of look at it, if you think about a human being in terms of analogy being an iceberg, then the piece that you can see above the water, that tends to represent our personality. And the much larger piece of the iceberg below the water, that tends to represent our character. So when and by the way, another thing we didn't really spend a lot of time on the other day, we tend to react instinctively from our personality and respond from our character. And typically you'll get a better outcome when you respond. When you have that pause moment, just like you mentioned the other day, think about what you're going to say or do, or think about what you're not going to say or do, and get a better outcome. So for people to realize their potential, you really have to embody, the whole iceberg, the personality being a part of it.
And I love the pause. I kept going back to that when I listened to it again. This is an oddball question. What was broken in the way that we traditionally talk about personality that made you feel like it needed to be remixed? Was there a point where you just said, this is not working, we can help?
Well, I'll go first if you like, only because when we first started, there were there are several different mechanisms for people to discover their personality. Some of them are very well known. We were looking at a particular piece of the pie at one point, which was from a safety perspective and how people could actually get themselves into trouble, be it physically or emotionally, by reacting to their natural tendencies. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, which I do believe separates the e-colors from other tools, is using what you know about your personality and tying it into practical applications. And what we'd love to do today is give you a few examples. I actually went back to the book this morning to have a look at a couple of things that I thought might be worth mentioning. But Mark, do you want to build on that before I go any further?
Absolutely. I think that when you first started the e-colors, you were attempting and you were understanding that despite all of the great things we had in place around trying to keep people safe in high risk environments, people were still getting hurt or worse. And that great question that you often said, what are we missing? Well, from my career in safety, which I still, do some of, um, that still goes on today. That still goes on today. People are still getting hurt or worse when they go to work for various different reasons. And it's like, well, what are we missing? We've got all the legal stuff in place, but what are we missing? And I think it's personality based reactions in a work environment, which is where you started this with Equilibria, Lewis, is a huge thing. And that research that we've done around so many different questions that I'm sure Lewis is going to move on to next, it becomes beautifully predictable across industry and also into one-to-one coaching with leaders. So that's the power of the e-colors. Wherever there are human beings, there are opportunities for growth and to potentially get there quicker in whatever we're looking to achieve. Back to you, Lewis.
Thank you. So, Denise, can I take a little bit of a slightly different perspective before we get into some of the actual typical things we were going to talk about? You mentioned before that a lot of your audience is, primarily American. Is that correct?
Primarily American, but we are heard all over the world. It's a global podcast, but 68% are in North America.
Excellent. So I'm sure of those 68%, 100% have heard of the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ask me what I think about it. Just don't.
No, but just as a matter of interest, we were working with a client, a large major, Chevron, and I think they'll be quite happy to mention it, back in the mid 2015-16, and the Super Bowl in 2017 was actually being hosted in Houston, and I was asked to go along and work with the Super Bowl host committee. When a city wins the right to host a Super Bowl, they spend 2 or 3 years preparing before the actual event takes place. And very quickly, we were given an opportunity that had never been done before, which was to train the 10,000 volunteers involved in the Super Bowl 2017 in the e-colors. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to page 61 in the book. The lady who was the CEO of the Super Bowl committee, a lady called Sally Sargent, I just want to read to you what she put in the book. Every city is different, and Houston is all about its people. We wanted to showcase and celebrate that. We needed our frontline ambassadors to be representatives for the city. When you bring a team like this together from all kinds of backgrounds, we needed help to get everyone on the same page and to learn how to work together to become one team. By adding Equilibria's e-colors program to the volunteer training, it taught people how to communicate with each other and, of course, with the 1 million plus visitors that enjoyed the downtown activities and events of the pre-Super Bowl. I mean, she had to get permission from the NFL to even make special wristbands that we made to get everybody's e-colors onto the uniforms, and it was the most phenomenal experience. So even in something like that, which is bringing a lot of people together who didn't get much training, we got probably a total of 3 or 4 hours training with over the 10,000 volunteers, it was reckoned to be one of the best fan experiences in the history of the game.
How did the people that you were training, that's a lot of people, are you still hearing from some of them? Are they still very excited about what they learned at that time?
Great question. So that was in 2017. We actually, when we launched our book last few months ago, we actually had Sally Sargent, the lady who was the CEO. We had her kind of facilitate the online launch that we did of the book. And she said, just like myself, you could still walk down the street in Houston and people go, "Oh, you're the e-colors people." I remember when going to hospitals where volunteers, some of them in the 70s and 80s, are working in the reception and other areas in the hospitals, still wearing the wristbands. Absolutely incredible to see.
That's amazing.
Yep. Just to give you an idea, the impact this has on people. I think we mentioned it the other day. One thing is to learn something about yourself at work. Another is to take it home. And I think that's what we keep seeing over and over again it's like dropping this pebble in the water. The ripple effect continues every day.
I have to tell you, and this is completely different from what I was going to talk with you about, but I was so glad I had read the book and taken, not the test. Tell me again. I know it's not a test.
Call it an indicator.
The indicator. But I had a weird thing happen to me a few days ago. It was really weird. Apparently, the city, I live in a very small, it used to be a village. Now it's a city. It's all grown up. But I was working in my office, which is the front of the house, and I kept smelling bleach. It wasn't awful, but it was bothering me. And I could not figure out what it was. And eventually I thought, I better go check this out. I walked into my living room. It's all one big room. It's a great room. And there's this, it looked like a graveyard had exploded, and I was waiting for ghosts to pop up. I mean, it was this oily, green, gray fog. And I went, oh my God, I thought the house was on fire. So I, ran around, I opened doors. When I opened up my bedroom, I literally could not see in there. I had to get a flashlight to see my own bedroom and make my way to the bathroom. Apparently, when the city was flushing the pipes, and they did warn us 2 weeks ago, but who reads those things? So they look like spam. We all forgot, And I'm telling you, what saved me from panicking, well, I don't panic. I'm not known for panicking, but I went back in the living room and I looked at my dog, who was sleeping with all this. The stuff was just flowing over her. I said, okay, it's not a fire. It's not and I didn't smell smoke. And I won't bore you with the whole detail, but, ran out, shut off the power, opened the windows, and called the fire department. But it could have been worse. I could have panicked and found myself, laying on the floor with a concussion. I didn't panic. And I'm telling you, part of it, when I went back and I looked at my colors again, I went, okay, that made sense.
Yeah. Pragmatic.
Very.
Yeah.
Very.
We call it personal intervention, and we call it a pause and play button.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I came in here and I wrote down pause because I did open the attic, and I did open everything. I wanted to see if I could see smoke, not this oily, whatever the heck it was. It was a fog. But I knew pretty quickly it wasn't a fire, but I also knew I couldn't stay in there.
But as you can imagine, as an ex-international DJ who still does a bit now and again, and a big music man, which is where the whole remix thing comes from, having the pause and play button I've used the pause and play button on multiple occasions as a DJ and a record producer, but then to have it introduced to me as a person, it was another reason that just brought me to the e-colors, because it was just like, this is so aligned with who I am. And it gives me a tool to work with, which is very important.
I need one of those. And I have to tell you, while I was waiting for the fire department to show up, I took the dog outside and made sure that she wasn't in here breathing it. The cats disappeared. They were under furniture somewhere. I washed the dishes. I just was not worried. Now I'm thinking, probably should have gone outside with the dog. But I had dishes to wash.
So that's another red-green trait. You've got to be doing something, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I was thinking, I was like, okay, it's not a fire, but man, it smelled like bleach for 2 days. So it is what it is. But Anyway, Lewis, you have spent years working with personality frameworks. So here's a question. Where do you see leaders misusing personality tools the most?
Very, very interesting question. I think, well, one of the misuse is in a lot of organizations, the only people that get exposed to something like you've done and, got your premium report, read through the report. A lot of
Yes,
times,
thank you for that.
it's a pleasure. And it stays with the leadership, unfortunately. And so the rest of the people don't get the same kind of exposure unless they're really proactive. So I think, a lot of people will tell you that great leaders are very, very willing for the people whom they lead to learn from what they've done and get the same kind of experiences. And they're ambitious for their people. If somebody's only ambitious for themselves, then people won't get exposed to the report, for example, the way that you did. So I think a lot of times people miss out because the leader's very much focused on themselves rather than the people who are actually, in their care. And just on the subject of leadership, I was sharing with somebody the other day, one of my best friends in Mississippi once told me in the middle of a leadership session, he said, "Lewis, I am going to give you the best definition of leadership you will ever hear." I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "If you think you're a leader and you look behind you and there ain't no one there, then you ain't no leader."
That's right. If they're not trailing behind you and, you're not the sheepdog and you need to be doing something different.
Yeah.
Mark, how about you? You work
Yeah.
closely with leaders as well. Where
Yeah,
do you see personality clashes
it's a
doing the
great
most damage?
it's a great question. I will come back to the personality clash thing you mentioned there, but there's around the misuse piece around this. We have some very strong ethics in Equilibria, and we really built those up over time in the early days of the organisation, because there are certain tools out there. Well, not Equilibria, not eColors ever, but there are certain tools out there that are used to decide whether or not you're going to employ somebody based on their personality. And, for us, you cannot use the e-colors for that. This is a coaching tool to develop and bring people on and realize their potential, understand where their strengths are, understand where their potential limiters are, and then make improvements. It might be incremental improvements every day, but make improvements. So, you cannot use this for, hiring or firing or promotion or anything else like that. It's got to be used as a coaching tool. So that's another piece around the friendly face of the e-colors. And the other thing I notice as well around certain tools is that sometimes they can be used for, well, we're going to have an offsite for, once a year, we'll have an offsite team building day or something like that. And then the people go, "Oh yeah, I remember we did that once." And I hear it sometimes, and I think to myself, well, you didn't use it then. You didn't actually get the practical applications and get going. And actually, that's one of the things that we do in Equilibria very, very well. Is, not only do we do the team days and the safety days, whatever it might be, based on personality and e-colors and coaching and groups, but we also do one-to-one coaching. So Lewis and I work with multiple organizations where people can book into our diaries for one-to-one sessions, whereby they can get a more of an understanding of what their premium report actually means, rather than just sort of putting it away. It's a consistent use of something which is going to really make it stick, and that's the beauty of the e-colors. It does stick. But for leaders, you can't treat these kind of things just as a tick box exercise. You must invest in your people continually, as Lewis said, for the leadership team to achieve what they want to achieve. You've got to keep all your people really engaged in understanding what it's all about. And I think the ethics to the e-colors are very important. We won't go into them all now, but they are very, very, very important. And I think they differentiate us from anything else. So personality clashes that you mentioned is a very interesting piece. I do see it a lot when I'm doing group sessions. But one of the things we do is a foundational exercise where we put people into their top e-color groups, or sometimes if we've got huge groups, we do it they break into the 12 e-color groups, and they do an exercise and they give us feedback, and you go around the room and you get the different answers from each of the groups, And then, one group will say, well, I want to be red. I'm doing, and then all of a sudden a yellow comes in and starts interrupting you and talking about something. I can literally do group coaching like that. Okay, how does that make you feel, red group? And they're like, oh, I don't like it. And the yellow group, oh, I didn't realize, So again, personality clashes can actually be completely reduced and or eradicated by just understanding e-colors and then adopting and committing to something that we call intentional communication and intentional leadership, because then all of a sudden, you suddenly realize, that person isn't being difficult. It's just that they're a yellow, blue, green, red, whatever it might be, and they're in their potential limiters maybe at this moment. So, okay, let's work together to find a solution. I mean, Lewis, back to you on conflict resolution. I mean, you've done it multiple times over the years with huge companies, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's a lot of it just is somebody willing to understand where the other person is coming from. I mean, how many times do arguments start? And basically, it's just because one person is they're not listening to what the other person is saying to understand what they're saying. They're listening for that moment when the other person stops talking so they can get in. And it becomes a very, very. In fact, one of the sessions I facilitated earlier on today was exactly that. When it all boiled down to it, it was just one e-color combination explaining something through their eyes, and the other person explaining it through their eyes. And it was only when they realized they both wanted the same thing, but the way they were trying to get there was significantly different. So again, with a bit of pause and play and a bit of mutual understanding and appreciation of where the other people, were coming from, they got there.
Yeah, very true.
This is a question for both of you or whoever wants to take it. What's one conversation framework from the book that leaders can implement immediately today? Look, the other day, I'm a leader. I am. We all are. We may be a person of one in a house with cats, hands up in the air, but I have a team, but we're still leading. And something you said, Lewis, a bit ago, I had to get out of my own way early on in my career because I realized that I was just barking orders. Do what I tell you, nobody gets hurt. Mm-hmm. I deliberately now hire people who are better at something than I am so I can learn from them. It took me a while to figure that out, though. But, I used the pause the other day when I thought my house was on fire. I was so proud of myself. I was like, I got to tell them. But what can leaders implement today, right now?
Well, right now, that I think the obvious one is if they haven't discovered their e-colors, get onto our website and discover their e-colors. And I don't say that in jest, because that is definitely the first step. There has to be a willingness for people to want to further develop themselves, and most people do. I think, again, we put something out the other day around what is the right question if you're trying to break the ice with a particular individual, regardless of regarding the fact that different questions work for different people. So I'll give you a simple example, Denise. Most red-greens, regardless of where they are in the world, if we ask the question, are you getting the results you would like today? Typically, what do you think the answer is?
No.
Exactly. And so,
you were talking to me, right? No.
There you go. So, but we've actually developed that for all 12 e-color combinations. Mark and I just went through it the other day. So if you think about that as a leader, whatever their natural style is, they're probably appealing to people of that style. But what about the other people? And so I think literally step one is to find out something about their e-colors. You get your premium report. And then just like you did, Denise, the faster you latch on to the power of pause and play, the quicker everything else will start to fall into place.
It was pretty interesting. And I didn't even realize it until after, I'm not going to call it smoke. I don't know what the heck it was, vapor. Once that had cleared out and the dog was talking to me again, I had to stop and think, well, I paused. Good girl. I was patting myself on the shoulder. But I wouldn't have thought of it that way. I would have just thought, well, I'm normally pretty calm in emergencies, so yeah, it would have been no big deal. But because I have read the book and I have spoken with you and I did do my colors, I was able to diagnose it right away.
So let me just give you the flip side as you're talking about emergencies. So thankfully, due to somebody who was very interested in what we were doing in Houston, a lady called Christine Kern, she was the lead for the EMS classes at one of the colleges there in Houston. And for about 5 years, I would go when the EMS students were going on their first day of their course, first or second day, we'd go and spend a day with them and take them through an e-colors experience. The very first time I went, I think there were about 80 students in the room, and probably a good 75 to 85% of them were top color blue. And I had not realized right away that day that we didn't actually introduce the personal intervention until the afternoon. So it wasn't till the afternoon, then they got the wristbands, they started to press play, not pause, but play, top color blue, and they started to speak up. So for the following years, we actually welcomed them to the class first thing in the morning, and within 10 minutes, we'd given them a wristband and said, here's your mechanism, for having that power or ability to speak up. And it completely changed the dynamic. And we see the same thing in schools, by the way. So whereas you may have paused because the natural tendency is to be doing, for a lot of people, the play button is just as important.
Well, that makes sense. And explain to our audience what blue means.
So again, top color blues tend to be pretty deep thinkers. They are relators. They want to know why. So, for example, very quickly, the red wants to know what, the green wants to know how, the yellow wants to know who. The typical thought process for a blue is wants to know why. They want to understand the purpose. And until they understand why they're being asked to do something, they're probably not going to be that engaged. They tend to be very steady. They don't have too many ups and downs, but they don't like conflict. So what one person would see as a normal conversation to stimulate ideas, a blue can feel that can be quite intimidating. And so they'll actually back off and withdraw.
Okay. So, and I'm writing that down. That's fascinating too, because I'm a strong blue as well. They say I was pretty even across the board, which did surprise me. So when you guys are writing this together, where did you disagree most, or did you? Is that a trick question?
The two yellows. We didn't disagree once. We were just having a great time. I mean,
Lewis, is he lying to me?
No, not at all. It was really
Okay.
no. I mean, him and I even put in his book about love remixed, I love Mark and I love his wife and I love his dog and I love working with him. It's just a natural thing for us to communicate without having to put any forethought into it at all. Now, Paul, who unfortunately couldn't make this call for a couple of family reasons, he's predominantly red-green. So his way of thinking is significantly different to ours. And if you think about it from an e-colors perspective, people who are predominantly, and again, got to keep in mind, we have all four personality styles within us, but people who are predominantly red-green, green-red, tend to be more logical in their thinking, whereas that yellow, blue, blue, yellow in us tends to be more emotionally based, if you like. So for Mark and I, it was just a question of making sure we didn't interrupt each other too many times.
Got it.
It was. I mean, we would literally spend. I mean, we would spend 3, sometimes 4 hours in a day. We actually did a whole thing over Christmas where whenever we were with our family, we were with each other online and just going through this book and just doing it. Yeah, and there were moments where we just stopped just to praise each other and talk
Of
about
course you did.
talk about how great we both are in a nice way, of course. And then
in a very, very humbling.
With
humility.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Humble.
Not egotistically, but just like, you're fantastic. And it was even in the last podcast, I think. But it's that kind of two yellows just bouncing off each other with joy. It's just like the most natural thing in the world for Lewis and I. So, and I remember Lewis saying to me a few times, I've got his first book here called At the End of the Day. which he signed for me back at Heathrow Airport when I was working there back in sort of, I don't know, 2011, 2012. I remember getting this book, and he said, when we were writing Personalities Remixed, he was like, did you ever think we'd be writing a book together? And when we met that first day at Heathrow Airport, and I was like, no, I didn't actually think we'd actually write a book together. So, for me, it's a joy. It was an ambition. Ultimately, I always wanted to be around equilibrium. From the first moment I got my premium report, I sent Lewis a message on LinkedIn straight away saying, we need to talk now because this is amazing and I need to be involved somehow. So here we are, and now, coach and director of the company and everything else that I'm involved in, and now co-author of this amazing book with Lewis and Paul. It's just an absolute joy. It's something I envisioned a long time ago. We just had fun writing this book, and I mean, I was actually, when we printed it for the very first time, I was like, look how thick it is. Because
It is.
I was like, my God, because most of my books are probably, half the thickness or 2/3 of the thickness of this book. And when we printed it the first time, I was like, wow, okay, right. We've really, I never realized how much we'd put into this. But when you look at 22 years as it is now, 22 years of research in one book to give people the best possible understanding of themselves and other people around them. Of course, it has to be this thick, but the read and the listen of the audio is, for me, I've done it many times, obviously writing it and then checking it. It's a joyful thing. And I really hope that more and more people grab hold of it as the weeks, months, years go by.
It's an amazing book. And Lewis, you mentioned Mark's other books. I have, and I'm looking right at them, Life Remixed and Money Remixed. And you're right, they're a little bit skinnier than Personalities Remixed. In fact, I'm actually measuring the spine because I'm just one of those people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I wanted to ask y'all, during this process, and I know Paul is not here to answer, maybe you can speak for him, but did you discover anything new, something new about yourselves in the process that had you scratching your head saying, gee, I didn't know?
If you don't mind, I do want to recognize a lot of this book was written by Paul. He put a tremendous amount of effort into it. And actually, if you think about his perspective as a red-green, you could almost go to the pages and go, I'm pretty sure who wrote that page or pages. Because, there's a certain way in the way with the think and the way that we actually, the way that we come across. I think one of the things that we learned, and Paul and I, along with two other people, co-founded Equilibria back in 2004. Paul and I realized pretty quickly, we are very, very, very different in the way we approach things. So there's many times where literally, not unlike the book, where I've written an email to somebody and said, Paul, I'm writing this to somebody who's predominantly red-green. How do you think this will land with you? If you were the recipient? And there's many times he will write an email and go, Lewis, you need to throw your yellow at this. So recognizing those traits is really important to understand. And I think the book did the same thing for us to a degree where, again, like Mark says, we also wanted to I'm just flicking through the pages now myself. There's so many good people from around the world, two of which live in Lafayette, by the way, which I think is where you are, Denise.
Yeah, I'm a village away.
Right. Well, they were major contributors, not only to our success when we first started Equilibrium, but were some of the first people to believe in what we were actually trying to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that because, I live in the Deep South and people here, I don't have an accent. I have a drawl. Thank you very much. Accents are regional and I don't sound Cajun. But people tend to even still think, oh, you've got an accent. You must not be that smart. Well, okay. I can't help you with that one. It happens. It does happen.
Well, I was taught by Bob Proctor, who was my coach and mentor before Lewis. And he used to say, observation is power, judgment is weakness. And, there's too much judgment in the world. I feel that, people are very quick to judge each other on so many different things, including personality tendencies. And actually what the e-colors does is it gives you that observational aspect so that you can understand yourself, know thyself, and also know others. So self and team awareness, right?
And, I'm glad you mentioned judgmental because when I was taking
The
not a
questionnaire,
test.
the
Yes.
indicator, the questionnaire. Go with any of those.
I'm stuck with I don't
All
wanna
right.
say it,
Don't worry.
but judgmental question popped up a couple of times, and I know I'm judgmental, so I answered it honestly. Was I
Yeah,
happy about it? No, but I know I am.
yeah, yeah.
Now I will almost instantly correct myself because I've trained myself to say, "Denise,
Mm.
was that true? Was that really true?"
Pause.
And
Pause,
it's an
Denise.
old bias, I have to get out of it, but, we're all judgmental. I don't care what anybody says, we all are. It's just how bad it is.
Well, and it's really interesting because judgmental does come up in the green potential limiters. And so anyone who's a real thinker and a real perfectionist and expects really, really high standards, if they're in their strengths, can also be quick to judge in their potential limiters. And again, that's where the pause and play moments can come up for every e-color. But as we're talking about, judgmental and green, whereas I have a 9% green, very, very low percentage. So when Bob Proctor said to me that, observation is power and judgment is weakness, I went, all right, then, well, I'll stop doing it. But it was easy
Right.
enough for me. It was easy enough for me because my 9% green just went, okay, no problem. Whereas actually someone like my wife with a 43% green,
Uh-oh.
for her, that's like, whoa, it was a huge challenge for her. But the more we live together, and 13 years in now, I think that she manages that very well. But ultimately, we're all learning, aren't we? We're all learning, we're all growing, and that's what this tool is about. That's what these books are about.
We are, and I have to take the person I'm most judgmental about is guess who? Me.
For
And
yourself.
and honestly, if anybody spoke to me in a Walmart parking lot the way I catch myself speaking to me, I'd need bail money.
Well, that's a pause button moment. That's a pause button moment if ever I've heard one. But if you think about the potential limiters in the green aspect, there's a little family of critical, self-critical, fears criticism, and judgmental. Those four, they're a little family, and they're all intertwined, and they come from that green, high standard thinker. Would you agree, Lewis?
Yeah, and that's again, this is what they tell us. In
Yeah.
fact, just as you're talking, I was smiling to myself because good friend of mine who shall remain nameless, but he'll know who I'm talking about if he listens. So he's predominantly green yellow. So not only does he judge, he then tells everybody.
Not in a Walmart parking lot, I
No,
hope.
no, exactly the opposite. But the yellow in him and he gives all the reasons in the world about why he's judging the person.
Brilliant.
Oh, I'd
That's fun.
probably get along just fine with it. But you know what I have to do? Because when I realized how judgmental, it's just ugly. It really is. And it hurts you. We are what we think. We are what we drink. We are what we eat. If you're thinking really icky things about yourself, you're going to stay down. You're just not going to get back up.
Well,
So I will.
Denise,
Huh,
I really want you to read Love Remix next.
well, you
Uh,
have to send it to me.
I will send it to you, but
Okay.
it's literally learning to love yourself and every human being, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, Lewis has very kindly put some words in there as well, and did an amazing testimonial of it. And I'm just mentioning it because part of love is actually not being any of our potential limiters ultimately.
Right. Well, what I learned to do, and I did this before I met y'all, but apparently I'm smarter than I think I am. I would stop. I would catch myself thinking something vaguely negative or just downright nasty. We all do it. And I would pause and I would say, Denise, is that true? Is it really true? And then I would have a little chat with myself and say, okay, we're not doing that again.
There's a lot of people that don't have that intelligence, or especially if we're younger. When we're younger, we're more, emotional potentially. So again, that's why one of the longest chapters in Personalities Remixed, in fact, the longest, is about e-colors for education, because when we take this to 7 years and above, into schools, you give them the opportunity to understand the things that we are all talking about now at our, great ages that we're at. You can introduce it to 7-year-old children. I wish I'd been. This is not a regret, but I do wish I'd been introduced to the e-colors at 10 years of age instead of 40.
Right. Lewis, I think you mentioned that chapter in the green room. I'm looking at it. It's page 313 of it. 317, I believe.
Mm.
Yes, and it is fascinating actually. That again, one of the we talked about the leaders before, when people say to me, take me to a place where we can see great leadership in action, my first choice will be to go to a school that we're working with, because a great principal is a great leader in a school system, right? And when you meet, and again, I said before that, great leaders are ambitious for the people. Well, imagine principal or headmistress, headmasters, they call them in the UK. They are fundamental for the success of every child in that school. And in fact, for about 7 or 8 years, we actually had a non-profit called E-Colors in Education. And one of the principals that we first met, a lady called Dr. Rosalinda Mercado, she actually became the CEO of E-Colors in Education. And what I saw in those days, again, just like Mark saying, introducing the E-Colors to 7-year-olds, and I'm thinking of one in particular who literally is now on a full ride scholarship at Rice University, an amazing E-Colors champion. She's actually written one of the forwards in the book here.
You mentioned him before.
Yes, Sarah. She's one of my heroes, Sarah Abbasad.
Sorry, girl. She's a VM. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and just amazing to see the journey that these kids could go on, because just like Mark's saying, when you give the E-Colors to a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, the first thing is they're not sitting there going, "Oh, I've heard all this stuff before. I don't need this." It's more information for them. When you see that bullying goes away, truancy goes away, pregnancy rates go down in the schools, visits to the principal for anything other than compliments changes completely. And the average graduation rate in the States, at least when we were there, it was 78.2%. And in the schools we've introduced the E-Colors, the graduation rate goes up somewhere between 98 and 100%.
But can they read? We're having a big problem with that here.
Well, that's part of it. And in fact, one of the things that they do, they have E-Color champions who actually sign a contract of conduct when they become a champion, because they are now representing us, themselves, their families, and everything else. And I will tell you, from a reading perspective, I've seen kids who didn't like to speak a lot in class, but were good artists, for example. And we even have an E-Color complete set of drawn animals by someone who didn't like to speak out, fantastic artist, and actually put a different animal to each one of the E-Colors so other people could learn from it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't want to read, or worse, don't know how to read. I'll be honest with you. I hate sleeping. I don't do it well. I sleep for 2 or 3 hours in a row, and that's about it. I mean, I only need about 4 hours a night. I've been this way all my life. My mother used to say that I wasn't an insomniac. I just didn't want to cut into my reading time. And she was right. I need to read all the time. But not everybody's like that, and I understand that.
Can I just add as well to the school discussion there, just to sort of round it off? So I was in Singapore recently, and they've got a school there that has been using the E-Colors for 10 years. And they told me some things that were just fantastic. One of the ones that really stuck with me was when all the children know their E-Colors from as soon as they attend the school, from I believe about 9 years of age right the way up to about 18. When they in the UK, we have something called detention. When you've been naughty, you stay after school.
I used to want to go to detention because nobody talked to me and I could read. I did everything I could to go there.
Well, in Singapore, they call it discipline, right? So it's like a discipline. So you stay after school for discipline, right? To understand. But what they do is they have the strengths and the potential limiters, and they know the E-Colors of each of the children that get sent to detention/discipline. And they sit down with the children and they look at which potential limiters came up for the reason why they've been sent to detention/discipline. And that's how they then basically coach the child to understand that well, this is what's happened, pause and play moments, you could have paused there or played there, whatever. And then they often as well, the child will go back and they'll, in a friendly way, they'll bring their parents to the discussion as well. And then the parents pick up the E-Colors as well from the child. and from the teacher, and they're talking about the potential limiters that are causing the problem. And very often the parents can then see things that are going on in their home or in their lives as well. And so, like the ripples in a pond effect that Lewis mentioned earlier, to see that and to see it in action, day in, day out, the way that we do, is a privilege. And I'm grateful to be, just a small part of it with Lewis and Paul and the rest of the team.
That's amazing. I really need to get Paul on this show at some point. How should couples, families, small business partnerships, schools use this book differently than large corporations? Because they are different, aren't they?
Lewis?
Well, yes, they are different, because for a small organization, getting everybody involved, obviously the smaller the organizations, the easier it is to get everybody involved. I think there's a lot to be said for, if going back to the simple vision that we have of realizing potential. One thing I think is worth understanding is not everybody wants to realize their potential at the same moment. So if somebody's not in the mood, that's fine. We don't judge them. We don't hold it against them in any way. When people are ready, they're ready. I think for small businesses, which we do a lot of work with, for families, etc., having e-color conversations at home is a phenomenal thing. I've seen many, many times, literally, where people, as I said before, they'll pick up something about the e-colors at work, they'll take it home, and next thing you know, they're having Christmas parties designed on the e-color.
Oh, I love that. Thanksgiving is always the danger play for us. You know what I'm talking about.
Big pause and play opportunities there for sure. I think for schools,
eat your turkey, don't talk.
Yeah, for school, for anywhere, it has to start at the top. So when we're working with an organization, you may get somebody in the kind of middle management who likes what you're doing, but if they don't have the right support or the understanding, it's never going to go that well. So ideally, in a school system, we try and start with the at least the principal, superintendents, the board, if you could get to them. But the higher in the organization you go, where there's an understanding of what you're wanting to do, once they get it, then it becomes a lot easier to bring it to the rest of the organization. But I think for anybody, people working in hospitals, for example, if you look at healthcare, which hospitals get sued the most for malpractice, it's where the doctor's bedside manner is not very desirable. And you see that over and over again. I mean, there's all kinds of studies being done it. So learning how to treat people as they need to be treated, communicated with as they need to be communicated with, is absolutely fundamental.
I wanted to ask both of you, is personality fixed, flexible, or situational?
I think it's very, very interesting question. We are all able to dip into all areas of our personality styles. I'd say it's definitely flexible in that way, that you can dip into different areas. I'm a yellow socializer, so I will gladly talk and engage and, practice listening better, making space for other people. Because when I was younger, I would just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and sometimes, to the detriment of myself and others. But I'm very able to get into red, the do mode, and the blue relator. I relate to people very, very well. It's harder for me to access my deep green thinker, but I can do it because I've managed to write 4 books and have a master's and various other qualifications. So, I would say it's flexible. And then the question around situational, I would, Lewis, I think it's situational, isn't it? Because that flexible and situational kind of go together. If I need to go into red mode, I'll go into red mode or blue mode or green mode, but I'm generally going to lead with yellow. But I think it's when you say situational, the key point is really being aware of it. Would you agree, Lewis?
Yeah, I think that is the key. Is once you're aware of it, then it's easier to change gear, for want of a better way of putting it, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve and with whom you're trying to achieve it with. And it's not about manipulation or anything like that. It's just meeting people where they're at.
And again, when you said that, I wrote down pause. I think for me, that's the most important thing. Pause.
So, Denise, if I read to you something about red and green with your personality style, how you tend to show up, just got a few things here that I just wanted to share with you. You tend to like results and be goal orientated. You expect competency and efficiency from others. You're good at troubleshooting. Like your personal space. I think we
Very
know that one,
much.
don't we?
Yeah.
And thrive on challenges and opportunities. That's just a few, but ultimately, within that, there are moments where you'll meet other people that have one of the other 11 e-color combinations that they're not meeting you at that place. And I think the skill for this, for me, was to learn that I had yellow blue at the start, now yellow red. But that's all very well being me, and it's good to be me. I also needed to understand how I was going to communicate with the red green, as an example, and my wife is a green blue. I need to understand how I'm going to communicate with people to have intentional outcomes.
One thing I've learned over time, because when you're young and you're arrogant and kind of sociopathic, but we hope we grow out of it. But what I had to learn when I come across people that I'm pretty sure they don't understand me at all, it's rare. It really is. But I settle into my empathy and I listen very, very carefully and I find out what's important to them. I'm not chatting. I'm not waving my hands around. I just want to know because I'm curious at that point. What's going on with this person? Who are they?
Well, that's good because you're balanced in your e-colors, as you said, with percentages all relatively, I imagine, in the 20s and or 30s. So you're quite balanced in that area, which means you can do it. When you find someone such as myself with a 40% yellow, or Lewis with a 40% yellow, and then different percentages, or 40% red, or whatever it might be, when you find these people with these different e-colors, it's not as natural, it's not as easy. And it becomes. I worked with a guy this week at a big manufacturing company. He was 45% green, 5% yellow. So he's a massive thinker and not very social. In fact, at the start of the session, he said, "I hate people." And I said, "Right, okay, here we go. This will be fun." But by the end of the session, 4 hours later, he was telling stories to the room, and I was like, "You realise what you've just done? Yeah, I love it. By the way, you've just gone into your yellow, and you've shared a great story, and everyone's enjoyed it." And he smiled and sort of sat back in his chair and went, "Oh yeah, that's what I've done there. Yeah."
Right, right.
And it
We
was
don't
nice.
know. We don't know until we listen to ourselves
We don't know
and
until we
start
know.
paying attention. We are running out of time. I
No.
wanted to ask, but yeah, we are. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask both of you because the book is fairly new. What has
Mm.
surprised you the most about readers' reactions so far?
Um, for me, it's just an overwhelming positive response. The book has reached across various different companies, disciplines, people. I think the natural tendency of writing it, as Lewis said earlier, Paul did a lot of the legwork actually in sort of structure, as you would expect from a red green personality. But certainly with myself and Lewis with the yellow red, we brought a lot of the stories. We collected a lot of the testimonials. Over 70, I believe, 70 people contributed to the book. So for us, as I said earlier, it was just a great deal of fun. And a lovely kind of testament to the last 20 plus years of Equilibria for us to use going forwards. But yeah, it's been overwhelmingly positive. So, and for me, going forward in the next 20 years of my life, I just want the world. I just want more people. I want 8 billion people to understand about themselves better, you know, better today than yesterday. And I think this personalities book, will stand the test of time of that, and will help people. Which ultimately, as yellows, myself and Lewis, that's all we want to do. We just want to help.
Yeah, and
Understood.
I think I echo what Mark is saying. It was a privilege to have the experiences that we've had to be able to write the book. It was a great experience to write the book. Lovely to see the reaction of people who were invited to contribute to the book, and seeing people's response having read the book or listened to the audio has really been an absolute privilege. And I just want to reinforce what I said the other day. Our hope is to get, or wish, desire, however you want to put it, is to get our personality diversity technology expressed through the e-colors into as many hands as possible around the world. Because I think if ever a time was it needed for people to be able to better understand each other, to willingly listen to each other and understand where the other people are coming from, the world will be a much better place. So regardless if it's a family unit or a school or a small business or a large business corporation, we have the means and the desire to be part of that process.
Well, Lewis and Mark, thank you so much. This has been another thoughtful and very important discussion. And I love the book. It's going to be on the shelf. I mean, where it lived until just about an hour ago, because it's right over there. I mean, I don't even have to bend over the arm of the chair. I can grab it without even leaning over. I'm in it constantly. It's got sticky notes all over it. I will not mark it up. My childhood librarian would rear up and get me. But it's an important book, I'm telling you. So before we say goodbye, and I hate to do it, but we have to, let's make sure our listeners know where to find you. Where can they connect with you individually, learn more about your work, and get a copy of Personalities Remixed?
So for myself, Personalities Remixed is on Amazon right now. You can also find more information about the book at my website, markwilkinsonofficial.com. You can book into my diary there. You can find me on LinkedIn and book into my diary via LinkedIn as well. I'd love to connect with you. I'm looking to connect with as many people as possible to keep sharing this good work with everybody. I mean, all the other remix books are out there as well, which Lewis has contributed, I think, to 3 of the 4 now, Lewis, haven't you? So, and then, of course, to discover your e-colors, please go to the Equilibria website, so equilibria.com, and then just click the orange button to discover your e-colors. You can find it for free to start with, and then if you want to upgrade to a basic or a premium report, then you can. But, we are not hiding, are we, Lewis? It's easy to contact. Well, I contacted Lewis the second I got my first e-colors report, and he came back to me within a few hours, and Lewis and I are very, very contactable, right, Lewis?
Yeah. So for me, same thing. Lewis.senior@equilibria.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, The Intentional CEO. You can go to info@Equilibria, and that will find it. You will find us there. I would really encourage people to get a copy of the book, listen to the audio, whichever suits your needs. And I really would encourage people to find out the recolors, get the premium report, and then from there we can go forward. And we look forward to as many connections as possible in the years to come, because life just becomes a whole lot better once you understand yourself and those around you.
Absolutely. And I do have one last question for both of you. If someone reads this book or listens to this podcast, or better yet, both, and walks away remembering just one shift in thinking, what do you most hope that shift will be? That one idea that can fundamentally change how they see themselves and the people around them?
Lewis?
Mark, you go first if you like. Give me a moment to think.
Okay. I would suggest that the key takeaway is an open-mindedness. An open-mindedness to what could I discover about myself. I find a lot of people kind of try and sort of shy away a little bit from levels of self-awareness or indeed self-development. And I think that if you have an open-mindedness to life and love and personality and money and all the other subjects that are out there, that open-mindedness is something that will really benefit every human being. And I think that the e-colors actually really facilitated that for me, because I used to go around the world, run around the world, being a yellow blue and wondering why I didn't like some people or some people didn't like me. It just became completely clear once I got my e-colors and started to study this subject, there's lots of other people that are not like me. So it gave me a much more open mind. And I suggest that that's a real beautiful thing for everybody.
Thank you, Mark. So for myself, I think, if you go all the way back in history, know thyself is key, and then knowing others, which is just as important. And then if you think about it, and again, I think this is one thing that I'm hoping Anybody who's in a leader position or in a position where they could or could not get this into their people's hands, it's worth considering this, because everybody has a personality. That is undeniable. The e-colors is a great way to understand them. And don't shortchange your people because you may not believe in it. It's quite surprising once in a while when people go, "Oh, I don't believe in the e-colors." Well, as Mark says, here you've got we've probably got the largest data lake of information in the world around different personality styles and what to do with it. My suggestion is take advantage of it.
Excellent. And when I was asking you that question, I wrote down for myself, be observant about yourself and about others. Don't take anything for granted.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed both conversations. And again, to our audience, get that book. It really does belong on your entrepreneurial shelf. But more than that, it belongs in your hands. So today we wrapped up a very important conversation with Lewis, Senior and Mark Wilkinson, authors of Surrounded by Potential Personalities Remixed, discussing how a fresh approach to personality can help you see potential, build trust, and lead more effectively. So be sure to connect with them and learn more about their work. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you next week on your Partner in Success Radio and the Closers Inner Circle podcast. Lewis, Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise. Much appreciated. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.